an associate professor teaching creativity and innovation for over 25 years, a consultant and speaker, and I'm so happy to have you on this call today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and hello, everybody.
This is great. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. We spoke once before, and little did I know at that time I was going to be doing this. So this is very exciting because you have done so much work and you're inspiring so many people. So why don't we just start, first of all, who inspires you or what inspires you to do the work you're doing in the world?
Well, I guess it's two things. One, I've been teaching for a long time, and it's an extension of that because after you've been teaching for years, you want to do something on a bigger scale, reach more people, and have more of an effect. And one of the things that inspires me, I mean, if you look at that, is just people in general, not any one individual. So what I really want to do is have a different way to teach creativity and innovation. Because what I basically, and this is the basis of the World Innovation Team, is we said that innovation is more in demand today, but you can't say that the people today are more creative than they were at any point in history. Therefore, we're not doing something well. We have a bigger demand, but we're not fulfilling the demand. So therefore, we have to do something different. And the World Innovation Team is a sort of a pilot project to try to do something different in order to meet the demand in innovation today in business and in the world.
Why don't you tell people about the project? I was so fascinated when you told me about it originally, and I'd like to hear more because I know you've done some more with working with colleges now, and you've had some different things that you are doing. So why don't you explain this, and go ahead.
Okay, well, there's a lot going on, so it's a fairly big question. But let me break it down into three.
Yeah, let's start with what the original intention of the World Innovation Team was. Yeah.
Okay. World Innovation Team started mainly because we wanted to, as I just said, teach or demonstrate that in order to teach innovation, or really, I'll use the word creativity, you got to go a lot further than everyone has done up till now.
What does that mean?
Well, it comes from the fact that I've taught innovation for more than 20 years all over the world. And when you teach it, and I teach it mainly on the university level and mainly on the graduate level, you're always frustrated because you can only take the students so far. This is true because of the university setting. It's true because of the time frame involved. And so a group of people basically said, well, if we could handpick a group of people, not just take everybody, because let's say when you teach an MBA course, you have a lot of people or some people in the group that are probably not ready for the type of training that you need to be able to do. And then run them a lot harder and for a lot longer than it's presently being done. I mean, at the best, I have a group of students for a semester, and that's 3 hours a week. And that's really not enough to make any real progress. So the idea behind the World Innovation Team is handpick a group of people from all over the world, not a group of people from one reference group, but from all over the world, and then take them a lot further and for a lot longer. The program runs for a whole year, and this is much more intensive than any of the programs out there. It's a radical program. But what we basically say is to make any change, that change has to be a lot more radical than what most people are willing to accept or ready for.
All right, so explain a little bit about the program and, I think people need to understand when you say it's radical, what does radical mean?
Okay, radical just means something, at least to me, that's not being done. That goes a little bit further. I mean, your
program runs a year, is that correct? And then people have a specialty. So I think that's what I'm trying. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, it's an 11-month program, and the program is on creativity and innovation. Entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship is a extension and of the fact that they are learning creativity, and basically the entrepreneurship is an application. When you look at the world now and you say, okay, where can you study creativity? Well, it's in one course or one short program. That's all. You don't really have a program that's involved with intensive learning of creativity. Our program, we have the people or the participants 24/7 for 11 months. That's not really being done. I mean, when I taught creativity, you had the students for 3 hours a week. Then they go home, they go into their comfort zones, they go into their patterns, they go back into their daily lives. In this program, no, they're not going to ever go home for 11 months. And so you're throwing...
Well, and I do believe in, I don't know if this has shifted from our original conversation, but they study each month in a different country.
That's correct. Yeah, they've...
Right, and I think that's a huge thing. I mean, that I think just even being in a different country and immersing yourself in another culture would change the way you look at the world and help you open up your creativity as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we have on it is they visit 40 countries in 11 months. And the reason for the constant travel, because they have one course per month, but then during the month they visit a few other countries. And the reason for that mainly is to destabilize everyone so that they stop trying to control everything. So that at the end, you know, they're having everything, every day is constantly new. New challenges, new things, new cultures, new everything. And the whole purpose of it is really so that they, in effect, at the end say, okay, tomorrow's a new day. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's okay. And that is not most people. Most adults want to control everything, want to know if they do something, what's going to happen, and that stymies and stifles innovation.
Okay, that was I think that was what I was trying to get at, is because of that, that was so unique, and that's what's radical about this, because you've pretty upended their world, and so they have to be open to possibilities and observations and all the pieces and being curious, all the things that are part of creativity. And when they're in that 11 months of immersion of seeing this change daily, it would change how.
Hello? 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 Phone just died.
Oh, no.
Hello? Yeah, hi, you back?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it cut off for a few minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep going on anyway. Can you keep going? Okay, so what are some of the challenges you're facing in putting this program together, and how have you handled those?
I think the biggest challenge we've faced is in the marketing of it, because we basically have to recruit globally, and for a startup that's almost unheard of, because we need diversity on the team. We can't run this program in any one country, because if we did, we'd be bound by the social rules of the country and also by the dominant group of participants who would be from that one place. So in this case, we are looking for a group of people that represent the entire world. Therefore, we need to advertise and market it not in the traditional way, mainly through social media, because otherwise it would be entirely expensive. I mean, too expensive. So this process has taken us longer than we thought. We thought we would get the program up and running in 6 months to a year, and it's actually taken longer, mainly because most people don't know we exist. So our main challenge is really to let people know. Once they do know about the program and understand what it's about, then most people are very receptive to it. But we just...
Well, I know you offer scholarships, so who are some of your partners that are giving you money for this?
Well, I mean, you have two questions there, Ray. One is the scholarships. A lot of people, when they look at the program, they don't understand it because they're looking at it in the traditional sense. Traditionally, scholarships are given for academic excellence or poverty, and that's not the case really with us. What we said is, okay, we need a lot of people to apply. Why? Because this program is not for everybody. A lot of the people are not really ready for what we're going to do, because we're really needing people who can be okay with studying almost every subject and have a very, very open mindset, which is not most people. So we said, well, we need to be able to really have a lot of people who apply and then select only the ones who are ready. With that, we said, well, if we run a tuition-based program or a new program, we're not really university-based. Therefore, we're not going to get many people to apply. In order to then have the program, we'd have to accept everybody, and most of the people who apply wouldn't be very, very good. I mean, for example, if we got 25 applicants the first year, maybe 5 would be good and 20 wouldn't be good, but we'd have to accept them anyway. So the idea of the scholarships is to get a lot of people to apply. And so a lot of people don't really understand that when they look at the program from outside. But this is the reason for it. Funding from it comes from a variety of sources. We have a problem-based learning segment within the program, which is for the 11 months. For 3 months, they'll be working with companies, working on problems that the companies are actively looking at the moment and trying to come up with ideas for the company. So because of that, you're looking at sponsorship from firms, from individuals who basically believe in what we're doing, because if we're successful, we'll change the way creativity is taught throughout the entire world, and that's quite big. Private investors, also tuition fee and application fees. That's what funds everything.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about, what is your definition of creativity?
Well, I would say my definition is fairly simple. It's looking at something different at a certain moment in time. I mean, there's not that much which is really new. I mean, a lot of people, they associate creativity with NASA or with the space-age products and new technology. And it's not really that. It's sort of adapting what you already have to something where it hasn't been used from. And so what we're really saying is it's just looking at something differently. Most people are not able to do that. If you look at problem-solving theory, most people have one solution to a problem. Now, problem-solving theory says the second solution should come from a 180-degree different angle, but usually it's not. Usually the second solution is a carbon copy of the first one, and the third solution is very, very similar to the second one. So most people try, when they have a problem, to come up with a solution which doesn't really disturb them very much. And really, most solutions come at it from, or you have to come at it from all angles simultaneously. And that's basically what creativity is all about.
Okay, so what are some ways that people can do that? What are your suggestions so that they don't come up with the same old problem and just change a word here and there? What are some of the techniques that you use with your students or suggest to people?
Well, I think that there's two things that are involved in it. One is be open to almost any kind of a solution. Look for ideas any place, even in places that most people avoid. When you take the average person, they have a mindset which is fairly narrow. And it's very difficult for them to understand how other people really look at this. Because the key to creativity is people. I mean, you take people out of it, there is no creativity. And so what we're really looking at in the basis of it is being able to understand a very diverse group of people, which is all people that are very different than yourself, and say, okay, how would a child look at this? How would a grandfather look at this? How would a handicapped person look at this? How would somebody, and you run in then all the reference groups, how would they look at it? And not so much from an intellectual point of view, but more from an emotional point of view. And then sort of say, okay, what does that mean? And I think this is sort of the way you have to approach it. But for most people, it's very difficult to do because they are one-dimensional. And what we're really talking about is being multidimensional.
Okay. It makes sense. So what do you do when you personally get stuck on a project? how do you break through your own creative blocks?
I think there is basically a couple of ways. Movement is the key to it. Usually what highly creative people do is they never sit down and concentrate. They're always working on, multitasking and working on several projects at the same time. So usually highly creative people will work for 10, 15 minutes, then take a break, go do something else, then come back. And when they come back, they go exactly to where they left off. It's not, losing concentration, but it's almost like throwing cold water in your face. You work for 15 minutes, then you take a break, that throws cold water in your face, then you come back. And when you come back, hopefully it's with a different perspective and point of view. So you're constantly working in short bursts, coming back, taking a break, coming back. And if you're really stuck, the best thing is just let it go for a while, maybe a day, 2 days. Go do something totally different. Now, most people are afraid of that, and also school does not really reinforce that. School just says sit down, concentrate. But that's not really what innovation is about. It's about working on several projects simultaneously for very short periods of time, but working on it almost constantly.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's what I do anyway. So it's like, okay, I'm always working on 3 things at the same time, and I do. I stop, I go change projects.
Exactly.
I come back.
And anything can give you inspiration. The other thing, and it goes to your question, is ask people. Creativity is not one guy working in an attic or a basement alone. No, it's a very social activity. So ask people, talk to people. Talk about your problems.
Well, that's one of the myths, though, that everybody thinks that you have to be in an attic somewhere working alone, or the find is in the basement. And I think that is a myth that we need to explore and say, no, that's not true. I think collaboration and connections will add so much to the growth of our society and our world, and we have to shift that paradigm.
I totally agree with you. See, most people, and this is one of the things I do when I teach you creativity, is that the key to it is other people. And most people, their biggest fear is other people. And when you find highly creative people, they're not at all afraid of other people. And this is really the key. I
never thought of that. That's a very interesting statement. I've never thought of that. That if
I know. A lot of my colleagues who are in innovation, they don't really get into that. But when I teach, it's the basis of the whole course. That you have to not be afraid of almost anything, because we're not afraid of the rain. We're not afraid of physical things. What we're afraid of is looking stupid, failing, and all that is involved other people.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to look stupid. You don't want somebody to reject you. You don't want to. So, and I think that's part of the problem, because people never raise their hand or say, "I've got a great idea," because they don't want to look stupid. Yeah. That's interesting. So, how do you approach that with the students? So, I'm just curious. Do you role play with them? Do you get them to start asking questions? And what do you do?
This is the point. You basically, and this is the problem that I have a lot with training and with corporations, because when you go and work in innovation, a lot of the money that's out there comes from companies. My background is basically as a university professor. Okay, and that's one type of career. But a lot of the creativity people who are working are out there, and they're working for companies. And they're severely handicapped, because when you are working for a corporation, they're almost telling, as a consultant, they're almost telling you, okay, this is what you can do, but don't disturb our employees, don't ask them really to change very much, and don't get into their personal lives. And especially in the United States, when you're outside the U.S., as I mainly teach, it's a bit different. So what you really need to do is to change their personality, and that takes a lot of time. You have to change the way they think about everything in their personal and professional lives. And this is almost impossible to do now, because you can only touch an employee's professional life. You can't do anything about them personally, and that doesn't do anything at all. That makes no real change. So what you really got to do is get them to start to question everything, turn everything upside down, inside out, put it back together, think like a child again, because children ask a lot more questions than adults do. Children say what's in their mind. Adults just suppress it all.
Right. We're into self-censoring, whereas a child just spews it out.
Yeah.
So I know you love to. You have an assessment tool, 100-question test. So what are some of the questions on there that would get people thinking on this call?
Well, a lot of the questions on the test, because the test is divided into 5 segments. And one of the segments is on assumption making. So some of the questions are about 20% are about how many assumptions that you make. And it's interesting because many people, when you ask them, they say, I don't make many assumptions. And then after they take the test, they realize, oh my God, they do. Because they're not even aware of the assumptions that they make, because we make so many in the course of a day. Another level of the test is about how much you can really trespass social rules. I mean, social rules, and these are not laws, these are rules or things that society says we should or should not do, and they vary from country to country and culture to culture. But when you need to be creative, you have to, go beyond those. And most people cannot do that. Creative people can live in society, obey all the rules, but when they need to turn on their creativity, at least mentally, there are no rules. And so a lot of the things go with that. One of the other sections is about freedom, because freedom is the most important word in creativity. If you ask highly creative people for 3 things they love, one of the things they mention is always freedom. And it goes back to how much freedom do you really want? How much do you need to be able to do things on your own? How much do you resent being told what to do and how to do it? So a lot of the questions are very personal. And a lot of the questions also can have latitude within the response. So that's why on the test at the moment, we're basically still correcting it by hand, because a lot of it needs a personal type of an evaluation rather than it's done totally by computer.
Oh, interesting. Well, that must take a lot of time, 100 questions. That's a lot of material to go through.
It takes about 1.5 hours to do it. It doesn't take very long to correct it.
Okay.
But, I mean, if you're
so what do you do with this assessment tool then? What is the next piece of this? How are you how are you using this data to then change minds or lives?
Well, at the moment, the test is still in its fine-tuning stages. And what we're really doing is mainly using it for self-knowledge at this point. We haven't had companies who have signed on to it because, again, the companies have two things. One, they want it to be done totally by sort of online so that the people can do it without any interaction. And two, a lot of the questions maybe go a little further than some of the companies want them to go. I have had the companies actually say that, but I can see, knowing what's involved in it, that may be a factor.
How can somebody get access to this or work with you?
All they have to do is contact me, and I'll just, as I say, send it to them, and we can work with it, because we're adding more questions now to it, and we're getting it up to the point where it could be put online, and very similar to the Strengths Finder test, where we have a bank of questions where each test can be totally different.
Okay, so what do you literally measuring then? And how I'm trying to understand how you're going to take this and use this then to create a product or to, influence change?
No, I mean, basically what we're doing is we're trying to say that this is a person's creative ability. It's not their level of creativity at the moment, but how much they're capable of using and accessing their creativity. I mean, it basically goes on one theory. Almost all children are highly creative, and it's said that only 2% of adults are. I mean, you're talking statistics, and this comes from the American Management Association, which says 90% of children are highly creative, only 2% of adults are. So what we're saying is, okay, all almost everybody used to be much more creative than they are today. So as you go through adolescence, you bury that creativity someplace within you. Well, some people have it slightly buried, and some people have it very deeply buried. And that's basically what this test will measure. So we're saying that this person is capable with X amount of training of really accessing their creativity. And this one will require 100 times more the work.
Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit because I know you're interested in moving people from apathy to action. You have this initiative called the Global Tolerance and Understanding. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is a new initiative, and it's one that the World Innovation Team has come up with in connection with 6 other global partners. And the partners are within the U.S., Europe, Africa, and South America. And basically what it is we're saying we're looking at this moment only for sponsorship, because the idea is really too big for any of the organizers or even collectively to do on our own. But what it is would be to launch a worldwide global contest, mainly for university students. And the idea of it is to mobilize the university students to work more toward global tolerance. And so what we would say is, okay, we're looking for university students to submit a video, and of course this would be free for them to do. And we would select one winner per country, so you'd have 195 winners, because at the moment the UN basically recognizes 195 countries. And these people would then, for 1 year, travel around the world, and they would go to schools, they would go to prisons, and they would talk to people in their own languages, in their own terms, in their own street language to a degree, and say, okay, listen, you have a choice. You can work with the system, or you can blow up the system. What are you going to do? And it's trying to prevent people from being radical. It's trying to say, okay, listen, you probably never left your home country, because it's true. And the UN statistic says only 3% of the world's population live outside of a country that they weren't born in, which means most of the people in this world were born in one country and are still living in one country and will die in that country. And statistically, most people have never traveled. They've never met a lot of other people. And so they have a very small group of friends or people that they tolerate, and the rest of it is all basically enemies. And so we're saying, okay, if you can meet representatives from other cultures and you can talk to them and see that they are not that much different than you, you look not for the differences but for the similarities, we can start to make a difference in tolerance, in understanding, and that will have an effect on terrorism.
I love it. That's a
big project. But
it's a big mission. Yes, it is.
Yeah, but if you look at what happened in Orlando, if you look at what happened in Dallas, if you look at what happened in Istanbul, it just totally ties in. You can't leave this to the police, but you have to try to stop terrorism. And this is something which is increasing. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. And if you have to do it with the police, you're never going to succeed. The only way to do it, and it goes back to the Christian morality and all of the morality from all of the religions, is you've got to say, I don't want to do harm. Why? Because I don't believe in it.
Mhm. And I agree. We have to start looking for the similarities. You know, we all want our children to be happy, healthy, and whole. You know, I mean, we want to be able to provide for them. So let's look at that rather than how we're different, and stop looking at the color of our skins and the shape of our eyes and all that kind of stuff. I agree.
But I mean, one of the frustrating things, and I know this is not a question, but I'd like to interject it, is when you start to work with this type of a project. I mean, when we first came up with it, we sent it out, and I say we because we're a group of companies involved in this, to friends and colleagues all over the world, and we got back mainly silence. And then when I sort of pressed some of my friends and colleagues and said, well, what's wrong with this? It's too big. Scale it back. That's
really well. That may be part of the reason that people don't take action, because it feels too big to them. Everything feels big and massive rather than we need to give everybody one baby step to do.
This is some of the people have said, listen, if we can't control this, we're not going to touch it. And this is the problem in innovation. Most people want to control everything. And there is something which is called the control paradox, which says you're only in control when you accept to be out of control. And a child does accept to be out of control. An adult does not accept that. And so what you're really looking at in innovation is you have a group of adults who are trying to control everything. I mean, when I teach, I often ask for volunteers. None of the adults really want to volunteer. They want to know, what am I volunteering for? Children just immediately want to volunteer. And this is what basically happens.
That's a fear. That's a level of fear. I think that, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before.
Totally.
People don't want to stand up. They're afraid to take a stand, to speak out, all of those things. And I, that's part of the reason I'm having this summit, is because I want people to hear all these other people and their ideas and see what you can do, because we all have the capabilities to do it if we choose. And sometimes we think big, and sometimes we have to think small. And it may be just, you decide today that you're going to smile at that person who you never would have smiled at before and said, hey, how are you? It can be small and simple, or it can be complex and huge. And there is a continuum. And I think that's what stops people from taking action too often, is they do feel like, oh, that's just too big, or we've always done it this way, or, well, if they can't solve the problem, what do you think I can do? So I'm always asking, what do you think we could, what can we do? So I love what your answer has been. So I do have one. We're getting towards the end, and I have a question for you. What is the legacy you would like to leave personally?
Actually, I never really thought of it, and I don't really care.
Okay.
I would like to make a difference in the world. First up, I think as you get older, you get less afraid in terms of what you do. And most young people, they try to do something, again, like we just talked about, small. And once you get older, you realize, no, you're not going to change anything by small thinking. I mean, even just with this new project, which is on social innovation, we call it 195 Go Global. There's a lot of projects out there that the UN is sponsoring, but they're very small projects. It's people walking in a group of four different people from 4 different countries, and they walk from one country to the other, and they get some money, but nobody knows about it. And when you start to realize that they have enormous amount of projects out there every day that nobody knows about, and therefore they only help a very fraction of the people on the planet, you go, no, that's not the way to handle it. You got to go much bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why I'm saying, and I said in the beginning, that for almost every change, the solution is much more dramatic and radical than most people are ready for. And this is what you really are faced with. I mean, even if you look at the American political situation today, and I don't want to go into a tangent on this, but if you look what Trump is doing, it's quite radical as opposed to what has been done before. And yet, and that will change the political system. This is what you sort of are faced with. Yet you're looking at, okay, there's a backlash to globalization, which is a big, big issue. But most people, except for the Brexit, etc., are not really talking about that. But it's a really big, big, big factor. So I think in terms of legacy, make a difference in the world somehow. That's about all.
Oh, okay. And do you have any last thoughts for people, how they can make a difference?
Yeah, and I think this is very important, communicate. Most people don't. They suppress everything. I think, we think 50,000 thoughts, and a month or even more, and we don't express most of those. And most people are not accessible. What I basically say is most people have invisible defense shields, and those shields are put up to keep everybody away from you. Try to contact anybody in power in any company or in the government. It's almost impossible to do. they have and they employ people whose jobs are just to keep everybody away. I mean, there's a very good question, Ray. How many people in the world will know you completely, physically, mentally, emotionally? And the answer is nobody. Why? Because you don't want them to. You want to keep everybody away from you. So the whole purpose in life is communicate. When you look at art, when you look at innovation, it's all about communication, telling people, talking about your feelings, letting everything come out. And this is exactly what most people don't do. And this is the most important. So contact me. I mean, I have a lot of students who say, I don't want to bother you. And I say, bother me. I mean, this is what the world is all about. Don't come in and try to, tiptoe and be polite. There is no politeness anymore. Look at what Trump is doing. There is no politically correct behavior anymore. This country is designed on politically correct behavior. That's what everything is, and you've got to go beyond that.
Well, thank you so much, Arthur. And how can people get a hold of you? How can they contact you?
The best way is by email, mainly because I travel so much. So the phone doesn't work so much because I'm only in one country at certain times. So the best thing is email either at my last name, which is Gogatz @yahoo.com, or Gogatz @worldinnovationteam.com. Either one is the best way. And then I'll get back to you very, very quickly.
Well, thank you, Arthur. I so appreciate it.
And everybody. Ray,
and I want to thank everybody who's been listening. I hope you took some great notes and think about how you're going to apply this rich information from Arthur today, and what's one thing you can do today to make a difference. So think about that, and I want to also remind you that you will have an opportunity, if you become a gold member, to be able to download